The authors of the textbook Persuasion in Social Movements, Charles Stewart, Craig Smith, and Robert Ditton Jr.,
make the argument that in forming social movements, primary leaders use various languaging strategies.
For example, slogans, songs, labeling, ridicule, obscenity, and nonverbal symbolic acts. To solidify their members while attracting new participants, gaining sympathy, and essentially strengthening their social movement.
This analysis will focus on the different ways that ACT UP utilizes languaging strategies to solidify and strengthen their social movement.
George Schenkel is quoted as defining a slogan as some pointed term, phrase, or expression fittingly worded which suggests action, loyalty, or which causes people to decide on and to fight for the realization of some principle or decisive issue. The ACT UP movement's most prominent slogan was "Silence equals death." It was borrowed from a group of 6 men who decided to come together to support and help each other through the difficulties of being gay in the age of AIDS. Silence equals death was inspired by the resemblance of the AIDS crisis to the German Nazi period. They declared that silence about the oppression and annihilation of gay people then and now must be broken as a matter of our survival. When the men decided to join ACT UP, they offered their slogan to the movement, and the movement gladly accepted. The parallels drawn between the AIDS crisis and the German Nazi period made the slogan appeal to the movement because they knew this was a horrific period and people would not want to be a part of anything that resembled such an inhumane period in history. They would not want history to repeat itself.
Stuart Smith and Ditton Jr. argue that songs have been a mainstay of social movements and institutions for centuries. Songs serve as a primary solidification tool due to their repetitive qualities, easy memorizational phrases, and earworm nature. Similar to songs are chants. ACT UP is not specifically paired with a protest song, but capitalizes on chants that still have a repetitive and lyric nature to provide key recognition. Condoms not cardinals. AIDS won't win. We'll never be silent again. ACT UP are a few taken from the official ACT UP website. Regarding the last chant, members are utilizing the play on words of acting out. Due to the fact that as children, people are told to not act out, members of ACT UP are acting out for those in the LGBTQ community who are still too afraid to act out and that still remain silent about certain issues. Chants are not only still relevant in today's society, but those from ACT UP are still utilized to persuade, motivate, and solidify members of similar social movements and social movement organizations that have stemmed from the main ACT UP social movement umbrella.
The ACT UP movement used labeling and ridicule to identify themselves apart from the enemy and to solidify the members of their organization. The specific labeling tactics the ACT UP movement used were casting themselves into a light that enabled them to engage supporters and the use of slang words that controlled or altered the perceptions of reality. By casting themselves into a light, they were able to make former derogatory words into symbols used to unite followers and supporters. The ACT UP members stood up during a time that was scary and dangerous and labeled themselves as gay or queer. This labeling proved to be powerful because it showed that they weren't afraid of who they are or who they loved. By saying these names were now a positive symbol, it shaped the way the public thought. The ridicule tactics used by the ACT UP movement were agitating the institutions by calling them monsters and attacking their ideals and what they stood for. They held signs that said the institutions were monsters and murderers because they were just sitting and watching AIDS kill these people and were doing nothing to try and prevent it. They wanted the government to see how much hatred and fire they had in their hearts. They were angry because no one was standing up for them.
In the use of languaging strategies, obscenity is the act of using an extremely offensive word or expression, including, but not limited to, profanity, sexual implications, and slurs against a particular group of people. ACT UP is an organization that consistently uses direct action and demonstration in a way that authority figures, such as policing figures, politicians, or the church, would consider to be completely inappropriate, disgusting, and revolting. The more graphic the imagery, the better. An example can be found in the Seattle Times. In a local high school, members of ACT UP organization passed out condoms to promote safe sex and pamphlets to explain the dangers of HIV. The pamphlet was called How to F Safely and showed pornographic pictures of people involved in sexual activities, including oral and anal sex, diagrams on how to use a condom, and how to sterilize needles with bleach. ACT UP wanted the pamphlets to grab the attention of the students, and obscenity certainly did. It also, however, repulsed several students. One student, Rachel Bianchi, going as far as to say that we didn't need a four-letter word to get the point across.
According to the textbook, nonverbal and symbolic acts can range from the clothes and appearance of a person to the sacred emblems or symbols that prove their point. For example, these symbols may be displayed on buttons, label pins, and articles of clothing to identify with one another and the cause. Therefore, identification is what members of the movement are ultimately trying to enhance. By taking these actions in order to identify with others, the movement is able to share similar feelings, experiences, or attitudes in order to relate on a deeper level. Some common symbolic acts are walkouts, sit-ins, strikes, picketing, parades, and boycotts. For ACT UP, it was important for them to bring awareness around the crisis of AIDS. Therefore, ACT UP made it a mission to use vocal and visual demonstrations which would ultimately allow people to focus on the critical issues of AIDS. The main source of getting this information out was through public protests, open forums, and information sharing. Displaying their name, ACT UP, as well as their mottos were important acts of advertisement that allowed them to grasp the attention of their desired audience.